one of the blocks for this Selvage quilt. And this is a pretty easy block to make, and it goes pretty fast, fairly fast. The biggest problem, the longest time is going to take, well, to collect these selvages. And once you have a variety, and this is, you know, a good size box, it's probably 8 inches tall, and I just kept throwing them in there as I finished my projects. You want to cut your selvage about 1.5 inches, because you want to have the information on the side, and sometimes these pieces are really colorful, like this. It has the colors that are used in the fabric, and it has a little design on it, and so that adds interest to the quilt. And you also want to have a little bit of the color from the fabric, which also adds interest, because you can see these blocks here. We have all of the information, we have the color, and then more information in more different color. Now, some of these pieces have fringes on it, like this is a fringe here. When you sew these pieces to your block, and I'll show you that later, you'll want to sew just inside that fringe. You don't want to sew on the fringe. So just inside where it's woven in the selvage. For this quilt, you'll want to have a dark background, because most of your selvages will be light. At least the ends of the selvage are usually white color or a light color. So I've chosen, it's Moda Grunge Basics, and it's called Picnic. And the number of the fabric is in the show notes, in the description below the video. And you're going to take on the right side of the fabric and mark a diagonal line. Now I use the Sew Line fabric mechanical pencil, and for dark fabric I use the white lead. So you'll mark all of those lines, and these are cut at 10.5 inches, and you'll need about 3.5 yards of the background fabric for a 60 by 80 quilt. And once you mark all your lines, you're going to take one of your pieces of fabric and lay the selvage edge here along that marked line, and just cover it up a little bit so you can't see it. And then you're just going to stitch right along the end of that selvage. And remember, this one has a fringe, so you're just going to stitch right to the inside of that fringe. And you'll trim off the extra fabric right now. For now, you'll just trim it so you can sew with it. We'll trim the whole square after this is finished. Now this piece is sewn on, and you don't have to get really particular about keeping it on that diagonal line. I just make sure I can't see the diagonal line and just sew right around there. It's very forgiving. So now you'll take your next piece of selvage and you'll lay it just on top of the raw edge of the first selvage. You'll want to make sure that you can stitch on the inside of this previous one. You don't want these raw edges showing. You want to take in all of that raw edge so it won't ravel. So you lay it here, and then we'll stitch the next one. And we're going to try to leave some of this fabric here from the previous one, and then sew this the same way. So you see now I've sewn this top one on, and there's a little bit of fabric left beneath it from the previous one, so you know that won't ravel out after you stitch it. And you don't have to press at this point. We don't press until it's all finished. So you'll continue adding these layers, adding these rows, until you get to the very end. So you want to keep, when you're keeping all your selvages, you want to be sure you keep small ones, because sometimes you can put a little bitty small one in this place here. Now you'll see this one has been stitched all the way to the end, and all these edges, these two edges, are kind of ragged. So now we're going to trim them. You flip it over, and you're going to use the edge of the fabric as your guide, the background fabric. Just put your ruler right over it so you're not cutting off any background fabric. And you'll just trim. And then trim the other side. Now what I like to do, I don't know if this is absolutely necessary, but I like to stitch these edges so there's not a place you can put something inside there. So I stitched like very close to the edge of these two edges. And you can see that. on this one. So you can see how the edges are stitched really close to the edge. And once that's finished, then I press them really well on both sides. I press the front, I flip it over and press the back, because sometimes you're on the bias here and sometimes it wants to get a little wonky. So if you press both sides, then you're ready to put your blocks into a quilt. For this setting, you can use virtually any setting you would use for half square triangles or log cabins, because half square triangles have a light side and a dark side, as well as log cabin blocks have a light side and a dark side. So any setting you can use for those two blocks, you can use for this block as well. And I have a few. If you go to the link that takes you to my blog, the link is in the description below, and you can see various different layouts, and you can see the layout I used in this for my quilt as well. Thank you for watching.